This was a movie where the entire cast, they were all there for the right reasons, because God knows nobody was making any money, and they really gave it their all. And the dialogue, it's so the text, it's dense, and so it's actually quite demanding of every member of the cast. Monologues that go on for sometimes 8 or 9 pages, like guys in the middle of the film. And I think that the film was sort of self-selecting because it was so difficult that, anybody that wanted to do it was obviously very much up for the challenge. And we just, we were very lucky. We didn't have any weak links.
Brady, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the Movie Podcast today.
Of course.
We are so delighted that we got to see this in 70 millimeter.
Oh, I'm happy you could see it that way too.
Yeah, I feel like this was like, we've been waiting so long to watch this, so this is the way that we're like, okay, we're seeing it the way that you intended. So
yeah, that's right.
It means so much to us, and just have to know, after everything, like, how does it feel to have this finally come out into the world?
It's a great relief. It's it's sort of like a teenager that's like that's ready to move out of the house, and you're like, I love you very much, but you best be moving on. So this project has been top of mind for so many years that I'm just thrilled to release some of that mental real estate and start thinking about other projects and other things.
That's amazing. Yeah, just like László, it's just like this labor of love. Now it's finally there for the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of public art. You have to give it away. I mean, people, they'll draw on it, they piss on it, they interface with it, and it's beyond your control. I mean, when you love something, you have to give it away.
It's such a beautiful movie as well. And when you look back to the idea of using VistaVision, like, why was that so important to you? Why was this like, this is how I want to tell the story?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. I mean, predominantly, it's because the camera was engineered in the 1950s, so it felt like a no-brainer to pull out a tool that was engineered in the 1950s. It would be sort of the most effective way of transporting people to the period. But also, I just genuinely believe that the future of the medium is large format photography. I think that in an effort to eventize the movie-going experience, if people are gonna, pay for a babysitter and to get a taxi, I mean, a night at the movies has become quite expensive, and so you really have to make it worth their while. And I think that, especially with large format exhibition, that you're really incentivizing the public to engage with it in that way.
Often we don't really talk about budget or like studio dynamics or anything like that when it comes to interviews, but when you see the budget of this film and you see the cast, you see this, how it sounds, you see how it looks, it's really a miracle that this film is able to come out in the year 2024. Just have to know, like, how can a film like this exist in 2024 when just as you were talking too about going to the theaters, seeing a large film, like, this is very unique a film going experience.
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, I'm just incredibly stubborn. And I mean, which my wife can tell you, it's a blessing and a curse, but I've never started something that I haven't finished, and that is just part of my own work ethic. I don't know where that comes from. I'm also a completist. If I collect something, I have to collect everything. It's like a sickness, and so I think that when it comes to fighting for my projects and their right to exist, my feeling is that whoever cares the most wins. Now, of course, like every project, there are always antagonists. I mean, there are always people who, unfortunately, actively, are trying to get in the way of you, erecting this thing, completing this thing, and it's always a tug of war. between, the artist and wherever their money's coming from, of course. And that's what the whole film is about.
You have embarrassment of riches with the amount of performances that you have in this movie. And you look at someone like Adrian Brody, who's just amazing. What was that first conversation like to kind of like get him on board? Think about László.
He and I really, really connected. We really did. He's a very soulful, human, poetic guy. And, we actually met, I think, for the first time in 2018. And then, schedules and stuff didn't align until 2022. But he and I were both so thrilled about it because it just sort of stuck in our craw, that first encounter. And of course, because of Adrian's heritage, his mother fled Hungary in 1956 during the revolution. He grew up speaking it in the house. I mean, there were a lot of reasons that it was sort of a no-brainer, but he also just imbued the film and the character with so much warmth that, to be, perfectly honest, it was not necessarily on the page, because one of the things that I had, communicated to him was, I was like, I want to make a film about a survivor that is not an altruist. And the thought process behind that is that survivors are frequently, especially in contemporary dramas, they're these, altruistic angels, like they're untouchable. And I think that suggests that audiences cannot empathize with someone just because they are flawed. And so, I mean, this is a man that is very much of the mid-century. Louis Kahn had 3 families. I mean, architects of the mid-century, architects today, sort of notoriously bastards. And because you sort of have to be, and it requires a level of obsession and inflexibility to bring these projects to life. So, I encouraged Adrian. I was like, don't be afraid to be, unlikable. And he wasn't. But the thing is that he is just so full of life and love and warmth that just, inadvertently ended up on screen. And I think the movie really benefits from it because you kind of just can't help but love the guy. But, you would feel the same way about Adrian in real life.
Yeah, and I think especially to see him paired with Guy Pearce, who's just unreal. The scene with throwing the penny, like there's so much in this film that I think we're just going to peel back more when we get to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, Guy and Felicity and Alessandro and Isak. I mean, the whole Raffi and Stacy. I mean, my whole team. This was a movie where the entire cast, they were all there for the right reasons, because God knows nobody was making any money, and they just they really gave it their all. And the dialogue, it's so the text, it's dense, and so it's actually quite demanding of every member of the cast. Monologues that go on for sometimes 8 or 9 pages, like Guy's in the middle of the film. And I think that the film was sort of self-selecting because it was so difficult that anybody that wanted to do it was obviously very much up for the challenge. And we just, we were very lucky. We didn't have any weak links.
And, something else that makes us so happy that this is coming to IMAX, not just for the scale of it, but for the sound, right? Like, we have the score for this film from Daniel Blumberg is just incredible. And, it starts very like a grand expedition, and then it almost turns a bit more methodical, a bit more syncopation to it. And
that's right.
There's a lot more under the surface of that. So I'd love to know just like, what was it like creating the sound of the Brutalist with him?
Well, yeah, I mean, Daniel's score is extraordinary. It's especially extraordinary given that he had such modest means. I mean, this score was made for, roughly a quarter of what most, film scores are made for, even for independent movies. It was really, made with like 2 tin cans and a piece of string.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it does sound.
Yeah, wow.
But they sound good, those 2 tin cans.
Good tin cans.
And then we also worked with Steve Single, our mixer, who's who's really extraordinary. You know, I'm really kind of banging on a drum for him because he's done extraordinary work on films like Tar or Justin Kurzel's movies. But I think that part of the reason that the film feels as sort of monolithic and gargantuan as it does is because of the mix. I mean, it is. Because if you're really breaking down what's on screen, it's pretty minimalistic. I mean, you know, we had a $10 million budget, which for some films would be comfortable, but because this was 170 pages and it spans so many years, it was very, very difficult to make it fit inside of that box. So, you know, I think all of my heads of department, it's really a testament to their work. My production designer, Judy Becker, or Lowell Crawley, my cinematographer, what they were able to do with so little. But that's actually the kind of the interesting thing about modernism is that it, you know, all you need is a piece of plywood and 2 concrete blocks, and you can create for yourself a beautiful coffee table. And it was so important to me that for this character who is, toils in poverty, you know, that he's still, even with nothing, he's living in a dignified way. Because I really resent when films, you know, portray poverty in a way that's, you know, so undignified, a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. Most people don't live that way.
Right.
And if you have a small space, you tend to keep it very, very clean, actually. And so, you know, what was so great was to actually think about a lot of his living spaces and how, you know, this character could make anything into a place of beauty, even with very, very, very modest means.
Definitely.
Absolutely. We're so grateful for your time. And we're so glad this movie is now going to be unleashed onto the world because, yeah, a lot of people need to see it. So thank you again. We'll talk to you again in the future.